Hi, I've been planning out some sort of tutorial series about technique for a while, and I'd like to start it out now by talking about what technique is and why I think it's important, and more importantly, why I believe that you too can have great technique. I mean, it's not just something that's reserved for an elite few master musicians or something like that. So what is technique? I guess the general definition of technique would just be the way that something is done. You know, the steps and procedures that you'd go through to complete whatever task it is that you wanted to do. For example, a runner might have runner's technique, and that's just the way that they run, how they do that, how they move their legs a certain way, and land on their feet to where they're efficient and avoiding injury. A skier might have skier's technique. I don't know how skier's technique looks, but that's just the way they're positioning their arms, where their feet are, and how they're going down the slope, whatever they do to ski, how they ski. For a musician, that's just how you're playing your instrument. So, for example, you might question, wow, I really like that stuff that she's playing. How does she do that? The answer to that mechanically would be something like she has her throat constricted at a certain diameter, and that's allowing air to flow out to her mouth and then to her mouthpiece and the horn, and that's making the reed vibrate at a certain pitch, and then she's listening to that and she's tonguing at the reed at certain intervals, and that's coordinating with her fingers that are simultaneously pressing down together, and then the blood's flowing in her arms, and then out there's gravity and pi and all of that. See, that's not what the musician is thinking about, though. It's become automatic. It's effortless mastery. So how do we get to that point of ability to where we can do something automatically and do it very well? Or can we ever get there? Because there are some people who believe that there are just certain people who are destined to be virtuosos, and others can't ever reach that kind of mastery, even if they wanted to, because they weren't born with that talent, that ability. And as much as they practice, they can never get to that level. And that idea goes for everything, not just music. Like, why is he good at math? Well, the answer might be he's just the math guy. He gets it. And I'm not a math guy, so I shouldn't even bother trying to learn this math because I'll never get to that level of talent. He just has something that I don't. And that's wrong, because we all have the ability to learn. We all have the same kinds of tissues in our bodies, which we all have bodies, hopefully, and we have muscles and brains with neuron connections all over the place, and we have the ability to form new connections. We have the ability to learn. That's what learning is. And we can always learn. And as long as we can learn a small step, we can put those small steps together and do something pretty great, like playing an instrument. And if you focus your attention, you can just basically learn about anything. I mean, they train birds and mice to do all kinds of complicated things, like playing the piano or solving some trick to get food, or they have the mouse go through the maze and then the cheese is at the other side. They have those kinds of things. And are those birds that play the piano just gifted? Did the scientists happen to get lucky and pick out only those elite birds with the inborn quality of being musically talented? I mean, no, they just went out and got regular individuals out of the batch and taught them these skills, and eventually they got good at it. They reinforced the good behavior, and now they have a skill. And it's only until after the training, after the muscles have developed and the process has been conditioned, that they seem different when compared to an individual without training. But that doesn't mean that any other bird can't go and get trained just as good as that trained bird. And if you find this interesting, you should check out classical conditioning if you haven't already heard of this. It's pretty interesting to have people who did all kinds of things with animals. That's great. But I guess the most important thing that I have to tell you is that as much as we might like to cover it up, we are animals with biological bodies that respond to things like conditioning to a great extent. And if we understand that, then we can break apart any task we might want to do, any technique, and reinforce the kinds of skills, practice the kinds of things that will eventually make that task effortless and automatic. You might also like to think, depending on what your beliefs are, that when you play your instrument, or when a very inspired individual is soloing, an inspired individual like John Coltrane over here, that the person is expressing the soul or the spiritual self that's coming through and doing something, interacting with the music. And that might be the case, but even so, you still have a body, and anything that you can do to that instrument object has to be done with your body. I mean, that's how you do stuff, is with your body. So you have to use your muscles to press down that button. No matter how inspired you are, if your muscles can't press down those buttons quick enough to play that sick line you just came up with, you're not going to be able to do it, just simply because you lack the conditioning and the training. An analogy might be, no matter how much the bird wants the food, if he didn't get the training, he can't play the piano. At that particular moment, he just can't do it because he hasn't been conditioned to do those tasks. I'll leave you with this, that the act of performing music, like any other task that living creatures can do, is a physical task. And in the future videos, I will show you exactly what kinds of exercises you can do to effectively strengthen the muscles and neural connections involved in playing music, so that when you are inspired, you will be able to express exactly what it is you want to say. And that's what's important.